I'd like to introduce our second keynote speaker on social entrepreneurship, Majora Carter. Majora is the founder and executive director of Sustainable South Bronx. Her numerous honors and awards include the 2002 New York City Council Women's History Month Pacesetter Award, the 2000 Environmental Advocate Award for Achievements in Community Development, and the 1999 U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Environmental Quality Award. Majora is a lifelong resident of Hunts Point in the South Bronx, a graduate of PS 48, IS 74, and the Bronx High School of Science, as well as Wesley University, where she earned a BA, and NYU, an MFA. She is a 2005 MacArthur Fellow, commonly known as the Genius Grant, and the 2002 Open Society Institute Community Fellow. Please welcome Majora Carter.
Hello all. I'm going to speak to you all, especially y'all, not as the burgeoning entrepreneurs as you are, but I'm going to assume that you are already masters and queens of the universe, and speak to you on that level because just as Steve was saying earlier, when you're doing your pitch, you're not just you're doing your pitch to somebody who's they're not just funding your project, they're funding you because they believe that you're going to make something happen for them. And it really is about the markets that they're building, and or that you're building. As the economist John Kenneth Galbraith said, corporations or businesses, exist to control markets, not to follow them, and they often replace them. So they form organizations large enough to forge the future for themselves. And the beauty of being an entrepreneur, future business, is that you can actually learn from lessons from the past. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about how local communities can actually be an integral part of the future you need to create for yourself, and one that will actually benefit you and the communities that you're working in the long and short term if you do it right. So just to give you an example of what we've been dealing with up in the South Bronx for a while, here's what's wrong. Our small, poor, Black and Latino part of New York City handles up to 40% of New York City's waste. Sewage treatment plant, sewage sludge pelletizing plant, 4 power plants, and we handle about 60,000 truck trips a week. And we also have one of the lowest levels of park space to people in the entire city. But when we're also part of the poorest congressional district in the country, even beating out areas along the Gulf Coast that many of us got intimately familiar with last year. Over 40% of us live at or below the poverty line and less than a couple of miles away from here. But back in the days, this area was a mostly white, working class area. This is back in the 1940s when my dad bought our home, which was his ticket to the great American dream. And others like him actually followed suit, and then came white flight, and that paved the way for Robert Moses, the master builder, to displace more than 500,000 people from their homes, many of them going into substandard housing projects that he built instead so that people from Westchester would have an easy way to drive their car down into Manhattan, regardless of the fact that where those highways were, people actually lived and worked. As things deteriorated, banks moved out, and this is a picture of essentially what it must have been like, for bankers to get together in a room and decide and just paint big red lines around where they were no longer going to make investments, in that area. So even if you had buildings, businesses, whatever, you were no longer able to get the kind of funding that you needed to make them work. And this is what we lived with. And this is where, literally, around the time I was born. Growing up, I saw a lot of buildings burn down around me, and because many landlords felt it was probably better economics for them to have their buildings torched and collect insurance money than try to collect any kind of investment from them. So now you can actually say that my father's investment was made worthless by corporate social irresponsibility. The South Bronx totally looked like a war zone, and in many cases it absolutely felt like one. My brother Lenny, after serving a couple tours in Vietnam, was gunned down a few blocks from my house, victim of the drug wars. Prospects for youth growing up in these conditions were not all that good. They're affected by the environment both physically, spiritually, and psychologically. We are the canaries in the coal mine, and with the same cumulative local impacts that I opened up with, they're coming everybody's way in terms of global warming. Environmental justice communities are point sources for most of the greenhouse gases that at this point pretty much everybody knows we need to curb. We have all the power plants, the highways, and all the diesel trucks that are right on top of us, and they result in huge, huge public health costs because many poor people end up using emergency rooms as primary care, getting less effective treatment at a higher price, which we pay for, and the underlying causes do not go addressed. Asthma hospitalization is still about 7 times higher than the national average in the South Bronx, and our 27% obesity rate is high even for this country, and diabetes goes right with it. But once we realized the extent to which these circumstances were not just a product, of some elusive free market that was just God knows where it really was, because bottom line is we kind of know that there is no such thing as a free market. We started to plan for our own future. And luckily we had the help of my very energetic dog, an abandoned puppy that I found tied to the post during a rainstorm. And while running one day, she actually dragged me into what I thought was just one of the many illegal dumps that we had in the neighborhood around that time. And it turned out to be a street end that actually dead-ended in the Bronx River. This actually was about after 6 different community cleanups, and here goes a couple of the cleanups. And this is what it looked like in 2004. And we actually, because we got a little seed grant, about $10,000, that we were able to leverage over 300 times, and this is us at the groundbreaking. I'm the one with a big old smile on my face, and this is what it looks like now, which was really the most ideal setting, for my wedding. I see it. But more importantly, even than my wedding, it was a bigger picture, which is that beginning work kind of set the stage for the South Bronx Greenway movement, a community and vision network of waterfront parks and paths that actually connect the community to each other and to surrounding neighborhoods. And this is Lafayette Avenue, a couple blocks away from my house. And this is what it looks like right now. This is what it's going to look like after the plan is done. We secured about $20 million for first phase projects here. This is the connection to Randall's Island, which is which connects us underneath the Hellgate Bridge. And this is going to look like this when all is said and done. But these physical improvements are not just pretty pieces, of infrastructure that we really like. They actually help inform public policy around transportation, traffic safety, the placement of waste and other kinds of burdensome facilities. And if they're done properly, they don't have to cause the community a terrible amount of pain. But sometimes they're not done that way, which is a bit of a problem. And also attractive outdoor venues like this that can actually inspire the kind of opportunities for owner-operated small businesses that perpetuate a culture of entrepreneurism. But as we nurture the natural environment, its abundance, I absolutely believe, will give back even more. We run a project called BEST, the Bronx Ecological Stewardship Training Program, and it provides job training in the field of ecological restoration, a little bit of brownfield remediation, so that folks from our community can actually participate in that for those well-paying jobs. Because little by little, we're trying to seed the area with those kinds of green-collar jobs and the workforce to match with both the financial and personal stake in their environment. The Sheridan Expressway, however, is an underutilized relic of the Robert Moses era, built with no regard for the neighborhoods that were actually divided by it. And even during rush hour, it goes virtually unused. And that picture on my left is actually a group of us sitting on the highway during rush hour. I kid you not, it was completely not unretouched. It was unretouched, believe me. And but what we did when we realized that the state was planning on spending $500 million public dollars to fix it, which we thought was beyond repair, we actually created an alternative transportation plan that actually allowed for the removal, of this retarded piece of infrastructure that all it did was bisect the community from itself and disconnect us from the waterfront. We now have an opportunity to pitch this idea to a whole group of stakeholders that actually also a smaller group participating, and now we're pushing it out to a bigger group. And we're thinking of parkland, economic development, of housing, and other kinds of local economic development. Okay. We also built New York City's first green roof and cool roof demonstration project on top of our offices. Cool roofs are highly reflective surfaces that don't absorb solar heat and pass it onto the building or the atmosphere. And green roof materials are soil and living plants. And what they do, neither one of those, green or cool roofs, actually, they can use both instead of petroleum-based products, so just like your normal torch down or black tar roof. And those degrade under the sun, and they also, when you in turn breathe that stuff in, and they also, neither one of those contribute to urban heat island effect. And also, since they retain stormwater, they don't, and the stormwater they retain is not funneled into the sewage treatment system in many of those, and also they conserve energies, which also means that you can reduce the amount of power plants and also sewage treatment plants in our communities, which often end up in poor communities of color like the South Bronx. And last but not least, they actually provide habitat for beautiful things like butterflies and friends. We were actually invaded by butterflies the first day we opened. And this demonstration project is also a springboard for a green roof installation project that we're trying to do in-house at SSB to bring jobs and sustainable economic activity to the South Bronx and beyond. And so what about partners? And this is another reason why I want to talk to you guys. SSB works with partners, including the Hugo New Corporation, which is one of the world's largest scrap, metal, and plastics recyclers, and the current holder of the city's 20-year recycling contract. And we've created this inspiring vision for a sustainable future with the Bronx Recycling Industrial Park. It's a collection of businesses that processes and uses recycled materials with easy barge and rail access, incorporating jobs, citywide waste mitigation, reduced reliance on diesel truck emissions, and also increase opportunities for greenway development, and a more healthy future for residents of the South Bronx that, of course, includes jobs. 300 to 500 is the estimate that we have right now. Now, I know that in recycling industrial park may not sound like a typical neighborhood beautification project, but to a community, that handles more than a third of the city's trash, has a 25% unemployment rate, and where 1 out of 4 kids has asthma, that is an inspiring vision of beauty that can transcend anything that's there right now. And but that vision is under imminent threat by the city's plan to build a 2,000-bed jail on the same piece of land. And so we ask ourselves every day, what are they trying to say to us? So now let's connect a couple of dots here. In an environmental justice community like the South Bronx, we're exposed to greatly increased levels of something called polycyclic aerosolized hydrocarbons, or PAHs, and the exhaust from burning oil. And Columbia University literally just did, I think just a few months ago, released a study that showed that PAHs cause brain damage, especially in children, affecting their ability to learn. Now in California, they plan how many jail cells they build, by how many kids are reading at grade level by the 3rd grade. And they come right out and say it, and can you really argue with that? It's a reliable metric, or so that's what they put out. But putting all the moral questions aside, it's not a big leap to understand that as a society, we're actually creating this market for prisons. And when you think about it, the return on investment isn't all that bad. You don't really have to advertise for it. Customer satisfaction is definitely not the issue. As a matter of fact, the conditions are really bad. You get a repeat customer. So, think about it, it's not that bad. But it's not really a great example of corporate social responsibility. But it is a market, a government-regulated, inefficient, ineffective one, but it is a market that has been created. Now, what we could be doing is creating markets for products and services by putting dollars into communities, supported infrastructure and land use plans like the one I was talking about earlier. People, educated, happy, and healthy people with supportive and supported families, equal profit-generating consumers for a broad range of projects and services that generate tax dollars to boot. Now, what else? We're addressing some of the issues in other ways. We have one corporate neighbor that's not really all that cooperative. They operate the sewage sludge facility that handles up to 75% of the city's sewage sludge. And when they moved in about 13, 14 years ago, we watched the asthma rates in the community just like go up through the roof, And I mean, growing up there, I thought asthma it didn't really like have an effect in my neighborhood, but suddenly it was huge. And so with the help of the Interfaith Center for Corporate Responsibility, we purchased just a small stake, in their company with the goal of introducing a shareholder resolution at their annual meeting, just to get the company to do a proper facilities report detailing the real amounts of toxics, molds, pathogens, and other substances, and how those pollutants actually affect the community and the local health and safety. So they flew to New York from their Texas headquarters to try to talk us out of it. And this was a greater degree of response that we had ever had in all of their time being in the community. And but still, they actually agreed. We were like, look, I'm sorry we went through all this, we're not going to back off that quickly. So, but what we did agree was we were going to put our statement right up in there as shareholders, and the management was going to respond, to our statement, but they were going to sit side by side, in the annual report. But even without any real lead time, and we did it so quickly, it was a little frightening, that our shareholder resolution still received about 30%, of the vote, which was huge for no outreach, no nothing. And but clearly, I think it's important for you guys to know that the message is out there. People are not interested in doing things the way they used to. This is one world that we're living in, and people want to be responsible, about it. And investors, in particular, kind of interested in those kind of clean, sustainable businesses. So, and you could support these investments, as you go forward, after you go public, in particular. Buy stock, for like various community groups and see what they bring to the table, or open up opportunities to get that kind of local input. You'd be surprised at what you find, and in particular, you want to help people in those positions specifically because they have a vested interest in making sure that your companies and their communities operate really well. And because if you guys do well, on some level, they're going to do well. And we're all in this together. And we can be wellsprings of talent and ideas, and we definitely kind of get that. But I want to just close real quickly because there is this interesting but shallow pool, I think, of economic stagnation over areas like the South Bronx, and big developments like the related, company's Gateway project that's building this 1 million square foot mall on the west side of the Bronx, or the government subsidized deal to build Yankee Stadium at huge taxpayer expense, like to represent themselves, as these, it's like they're coming in as this bucket to bail us out, because we really need all the help we can get. But it doesn't really work like that. It makes a big splash. Okay, but it doesn't necessarily distinguish, between, the muck that's underneath the surface or the jewels that are there. It just picks it up and just does nothing all that well with it. You need a spoon, to kind of bail out situations like that, or better yet, you need lots of spoons. Lots of people, the spoons in the hands of people, who have a real vested interest, in actually helping to make our communities better. And that's the businesses, it's the folks that live there, it's the government, who all want to see these great things happen. And I think Steve's an example of investing in local nonprofits and environmental initiatives, buying wind power. It's like a really wonderful way of showing like you thinking bigger and wanting to make the community around you better, and donating and is a really great, fantastic thing. But donating is not just the only way to go. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, you should. But it's investing, in a collective future that goes beyond donating. It's investing in a cycle of dollars and services that generate new ideas, less conflict, and sustainable outcomes for everyone, from the local community to the businesses and to the bottom line of the planet as a whole. So thank you very much for your time.